Shabbat Shalom. Jonah and Eliana, on any day, I'd be honored to celebrate with you. That includes today. What a beautiful, beautiful morning. Thank you for that, Ms. Altov. Rabbi Holtzblatt is here with me in spirit. We are blessed to work with and for a community that supports us in being where we need to be and when we need to be there. She is with her family at a truly once-in-a-generation family celebration, where she needs to be, when she needs to be there. Thank you to this community for supporting her in that. I am on what Jonah, I think, referred to as a sacred rest, a Shemitah, in his sermon, and feel like whenever I come home here, I am where I need to be when I need to be there. And what I needed today was to be with all of you. If I say anything else this morning, I'm going to try to do this in a reasonable amount of time for all of our sakes. I would like you to just remember this. Sarah and Yaron were more than symbols. They were more than Israel and Palestine. They were more than a Jew and a Christian, members of the Jewish community caught in a vile anti-Semitic act. They were the children of parents who have lost their loved ones too soon. They are layered stories that are not only about what we feel as a people right now, but also about what their loved ones will have to live with for the rest of their lives. God willing, they will be long. If you remember nothing else, remember that we retain our humanity when every loss is about the human and the concentric circles that surround them. This is about us, but it's really not. It's about 4 grieving parents. And for those of you in the room who have been or are or will always be grieving parents, you know exactly what I mean. You may have reminded me of this. So as political points are made, biases are upheld or knocked down, please don't forget the family loss. We cannot forget that. There are 0 degrees of separation in general in the Jewish community. There are even fewer degrees of separation than 0 when something happens here in our city. Sarah and Yaron davened here. I think we're here at the last festival Shabbat. It was not unusual for Sarah, as an employee of the Israeli embassy, to be in conversation with Marcy over events that were being held, because we and the embassy often share space one with the other. We're family. The event was an AJC event for which the leadership of the AJC in Addis, Israel is deeply intertwined along with its membership. The Capital Jewish Museum is a home of Addis, Israel. Our first home is the center or part of that museum. And our leadership are tied up one with the other, always. The Israeli embassy, our neighbors. And our love goes out to Ambassador Leiter and to Sausan Hasson, the Minister of Public Diplomacy, our sister. Israel, the event, the Shared Society Humanitarian Aid to Gaza event that was happening on Wednesday night, led essentially by Israel, has been here multiple times, has representatives in this congregation, an organization that we support. There were members of our community in the museum on Wednesday night. that work at the museum, who will now live with that space of trauma as their workplace, we love you. We are here for you. There are fewer than 0 degrees of separation. The last one I want to mention is Tech to Peace. We are in this community very familiar with shared society nonprofits, both here and in Israel, that are working with Israelis and Palestinians. Most familiar to us is probably the Jerusalem Youth Chorus, because Micah Hendler, who davens with us and leads us, was a founder. But our federation also supports many shared society enterprises, and Tech to Peace, the one that now the world is learning about, which I wish would have learned about long before this event, is also part of this congregation, in that Jake Shapiro, who grew up here, was a lead facilitator and very close friends with Sarah. In fact, when this community took a group last year to Israel as part of our solidarity mission, Jake and one of his Palestinian facilitator close friends met with us in the hotel to talk about how difficult the work that they do is. So Jake and Sarah were very close friends. He wrote this publicly. He wrote it to me when we talked over the past couple days. He said, "Sarah, my friend and coworker at Tech to Peace, was killed yesterday. She was a shining light and eager to help however she could. She cared deeply about building peace between Palestinians and Israelis. Too many lives, Jewish and Palestinian, have been lost in this conflict, and so I hope Sarah's memory is a blessing for peace. One small bright spot in all of this is seeing both Israelis and Palestinians that knew Sarah sending their condolences and remembering her together. Baruch Dayan Ha'emet." Sarah was a layered, textured, full human being that goes beyond our global historical story, even though she was part of that. The embassy public diplomacy team wrote about her. She radiated joy and spunk and energy in everything she did. She was unapologetically herself in every space she entered. She lived by the Jewish ideal of being a light unto the nations. Her mission was to bring light to those who were ostracized for their pro-Israel views. She stood proudly as a Jew and a Zionist, even in spaces that resisted her presence. Yaron was a full, textured, layered, bright human being that goes beyond even what any of us might be feeling right now. He was born in Israel. He moved and lived with his family for a while in Germany. He played, I learned in a New York Times article, for Behar Jerusalem Soccer Club as a kid. And the dean of the Argamon Institute for Advanced Studies in Jerusalem said he was a devout Christian who tied his fate in with the Jewish people. A friend of his wrote, "The finest friend I've ever had, endlessly thoughtful, full of curiosity, brimming with ideas. I don't think we ever had a conversation that didn't leave me inspired to write something new. He was excited about the future. About the future he and his fiancée-to-be were going to build together. I want us to remember Yaron and Miriam. I want us to remember their families. I want us to just hold on to what it would mean to hear from the ambassador to the United States of the State of Israel to be the one who informs you when they tell you your daughter is no longer alive, that she was going to be engaged a week from now. Because that is what Ambassador Leiter had to do when he called Sarah's family. It's not just them we've lost. It is all of their potential. Everything that they may have been or created or co-created in the world. All of the peace and interfaith work they may have produced, yes, but their family story. May their memories be for a blessing. Always. going to say something about anti-Semitism and then a piece of Torah. This was a gathering of Jews at a Jewish institution. It doesn't matter what we learn about the terrorist, what he may have thought or intended. He went to a Jewish institution where he would find Jews, and he shot to kill. Period. Does it burn differently when the victims were precisely the kind of people who were trying to build a different kind of future? It burns differently, but it doesn't take away from the pure hate crime that it was. That is what a hate crime is. It doesn't matter what somebody's politics are. It doesn't matter what they believe. It doesn't even matter sometimes what they might say. If you kill them for who they are, it is a hate crime. In this case, it is anti-Semitism, pure and simple. This is bigger than the politics. Yair Rosenberg, in an article in The Atlantic yesterday, wrote, like Hamas, the perpetrator wrapped his anti-Semitic animus in a disguise for the Palestinian struggle. Free Palestine, Intifada revolution, or I did it for Gaza, all things that he said. His depraved actions, like theirs, Hamas's, exposed the lie of the lofty words. Society will never be free. Any society will not be free until we are liberated from the megalomaniacal men who perpetrate demonic acts in their name. No society will be free until we are rid of the people who will act like this in the name of free society. Any society. This is a confusing time. I really want to say, it's confusing, it's confounding for a lot of reasons. One, all we want is to be able to live as we are, who we are, Jews, as anybody else would. And we live in 2025, so I'm sorry, we cannot. And I don't know when or if we will be able to again. I don't know. But it is a reality that exists right now. It's confusing because, as Rabbi David Wolpe wrote this week, causality is tricky. He said this: there is no direct line between the protests on the campuses of Columbia, Harvard, Berkeley, UCLA, and other institutions to the gunmen. Causality is tricky. There's no direct line. Do you remember after the Tree of Life shooting? I'm sure I said something from the Bima, like, the extreme voices in society, perhaps coming out of the White House, are responsible for this act. And people would say there is no direct line between what people are hearing in public and the extreme voices and a crazy person with a gun who shoots somebody. It's a confusing time because we all want to double down on the positions we already held. Our biases that do animate us. We want every tragic story to fit into the neat little box that makes sense for the way in which we already see the world, when in fact maybe each of us needs to see the world a little bit differently than we do. Causality is tricky, but Rabbi Wolpe said causality is also real. You cannot give free rein to racism and be shocked when African Americans are assaulted. You cannot post swastikas on campus and expect Jews will remain exempt from the harm. The combination of shocking statements about Jews has spread across the ideological spectrum. We have heard anti-Semitic claims in both left or progressive spaces and right-wing talk radio, and they are often echoing conspiratorial bile that Jews have seen for centuries. Causality is tricky and causality is real. And the one thing we all know to be real is that there are extreme voices in society that have moved themselves into the center. We have allowed it to happen, we, the grand we of societies, more than just ours. We have allowed it to happen, and we cannot be surprised. We cannot be surprised when tragedy happens over and over and over again. Causality is tricky, but it's also real. It's also real. We, ourselves, need to take back the public square from the extremists who would want to make it their own, or who maybe already have. And as Rabbi Holtzblatt and I wrote in Haaretz on Thursday, be those voices be from the halls of power or the hallways between classrooms. Lastly, there's a reason Rabbi Holtzblatt and I keep going back to the Rabbi Akiva Torah. The story, the parable is this. The Talmud somewhat historically says that the evil empire of Rome decreed that Jews could not study Torah in public any longer. Rabbi Akiva kept teaching Torah in public. This put him in danger. So Papos ben Yehuda came and he said, "What are you doing? Aren't you afraid for your own life? Why would you risk your own safety when you don't have to?" And Rabbi Akiva said, "I'm going to tell you a parable to give you the answer. A fox walked up to a river and saw fish darting around. It looked like they were trying to escape from something. And the fox said to the fish, why are you darting around like that? What's going on? Mipnei ma atem borchim. Why are you fleeing?" And the fish said, "Because there's nets everywhere trying to catch us. So we spend our lives basically trying to avoid death." The fox, being the fox, the story was written in a very particular way, said, "Oh, well, that sounds terrible. Why don't you come up here on dry land with me? You won't have to run for your life." And the fish says to the fox, "You are the one who they call the cleverest of all the animals? You're a fool. If we are afraid in the water, our natural habitat, where we belong, the space that gives us life, then in a habitat that will kill us without the very thing that gives us life, no. That's no way to live." And Rabbi Akiva says, we too Jews, we find ourselves in Torah, and if we give that up, we might as well be stepping outside of the very water that allows us and animates us, brings us to who we are meant to be. So here's the thing about this story. I don't know what to do with it all of the time, because I don't want to be the person that stands up here and says, "Yeah, I'm sure somebody who lost somebody who was Jewish because they were Jewish would happily say, yeah, I'm okay with the fact that they're no longer in my life because at least they had Torah." I'm not going to be the person who says that to you or tells you how to feel in that particular kind of way. And I don't think this text wants to create the binary of, Rabbi Akiva saying, "I would rather die with Torah than live without it." I don't think that's the only point of this story. I think what this story is trying to teach us, and something more reasonable, is that, yes, danger is everywhere, and perfection is impossible, and purity of place will never happen, and absolute safety is beyond our grasp, and life is too short and too fragile. And if all of that is the case, then it must be the case that each of us needs to root ourselves, ground ourselves, plant ourselves into something bigger, more eternal than our own individual existence. And without that, we will in some way be lost or bereft of something that matters too much, and that is Torah. We are here because of Torah, Judaism, and Am Yisrael, the story of the Jewish people, which is very much chai, alive. We root ourselves in that story even when it's dangerous, not because everybody should risk their life at every moment. Again, you figure out what's best for you, but we always come back to Torah, mitzvot, and Am Yisrael, the Jewish people. And we live and swim in them because they are what make us unique as a people. Our friend Sausan Hassan wrote about Sarah. She carried a quiet strength that spoke volumes. She also possessed a wisdom far beyond her years, coupled with an effortless charm that made people feel instantly seen and valued. When she made the decision to join the embassy team, when Sarah Milgram made the decision to join the embassy team, she went through an incredibly difficult period. Many of her closest friends turned their backs on her. They accused her of being complicit in genocide, implied she was a terrible person for accepting the role, and ultimately cut off all contact. But Sarah stood firm. She knew exactly who she was and what she believed in. She was a peacemaker. She was Rabbi Akiva all over again. Besieged is how many of us feel. Some people besieged quite literally. Others by circumstances. Let's be here for one another. Let's remember Sarah and Yaron. Let's immerse ourselves in the very water that gives us life, Torah. Let's take the microphones away from the extremists and continue to put them into the hands of those who will teach us how to live together with our differences, but together, honoring one another as individuals, as humans, as full stories, as bigger than any one decision we make. That is the light. That is the light and the way and the path that has been shown to us. May their memories be for a blessing, Sarah and Yaron. May their families know the measure of comfort that we, the Jewish community, can offer them and should offer them. May they feel what it means to be a part of Am Yisrael. May they truly feel it. May we reach out to our partners at AJC, Capital Jewish Museum, the Embassy, Tech to Peace, and let them know our hearts are wrapped up in theirs. And their pain is ours, even as we feel it differently, even as we see the world differently from one another. Shabbat Shalom. Cantor Brown is going to lead us in Einei, and then we will close with Kaddish. to invite those who are in mourning, those whose tradition it is, and those who would like to rise in spirit or body and join me on page 30 for Kaddish Yatom. Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divra kirute v'amlich malchute, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, b'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen, yehe shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lamei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal, Shemei Dekudisha Barichu, Le'ela min kol bir chata v'shirata, Tush bechata v'nechemata, Da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen, Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen, Osei shalom b'imromav, Hu ya'asei shalom, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael.